Recording is on.
Okay, here we go. Welcome everyone. Bitcoin Design Guide Jam session number 12 already here. And we have three things on the list today to discuss. First one was Patricia's proposal for a merchant section in the guide. Then Johns and Pavlinex would like to present a drafter of a Lightning Tech Primer. And then we probably don't have time for it. But there was also a suggestion to read through the usage lifecycle page and come up with some more Bitcoin specific information. But why don't we just kick it off? And I think there was an extra thing, Patricia, you had just mentioned it, also a discussion or kicking off accessibility effort a little bit, right?
Yes.
Would you like to take over here?
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll make it super brief. In fact, like half the people on this call, as I was saying, have already read this and provided some pretty great feedback. I just wanted to pass along a link to a proposal for the merchant section. I want to make it useful. I want to make it something that people actually will implement, and hopefully it'll create some sort of increase in their quality of life in their business or however they intend to use it. I think the design guide is awesome, but it would be even better if we could include a section that focused on merchants specifically. And I think by doing this, we kind of open up a lot of doors for one, learning how we can improve, and two, freely testing this information, getting user feedback, and figuring out a good approach to what we already have. So I know Johns and Pavlinex have already started a lot of research on payments. And I think that by building on that and also like taking this to people who are currently trying to use Lightning and getting their feedback in person would be great. So one thing that I think would be a good use case is Oslo Freedom Forum. They're trying to get activists involved, setting up BTC Pay servers and kind of local merchants, perhaps who in their own countries have the presence of authoritarianism. We could maybe see how this might work for them. We could also see kind of how things are going in El Zonte, if this is of use to them using the Lightning Network and having this sort of legal tender. I know there's a lot of folks who maybe are not familiar with Bitcoin or how to get started. So maybe just figuring out what works for people. And I'm sure this will change over time and it's very regionally specific, but we'd just love some feedback on this. It's open to editing, or if you in private want to DM me, I just want to make this something that we can all use. And sort of jumping off the accessibility point, Alexa and I had said we would do a little bit of this maybe like a few weeks ago. And I think there is room for an actual accessibility section, but maybe this could be like a good first flavor of like how accessibility works for merchants. I'm just kind of throwing things out there. So I'll wrap this up. That way we have enough time for everyone else here in the meeting. But yeah, all feedback is welcome on this document.
Awesome, and that is linked to in the chat here on the side. And it looks like you have, I'm just looking over it real quick, you have a brief summary, objective, approach, and then a rough skeleton for a section and timeline.
Yeah, I want to add to it, but I'm trying to keep it pretty simple initially, though if there's anything you guys think should be in there, we should try to like include everyone's opinions. I don't think it should be one person making a skeleton for what should exist. Hopefully it's everybody.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure Mr. Pavlinex here with his hardcore experience on BTC Pay could kind of very efficiently identify pain points and kind of the most important things to tackle. And
yes, he's already helped a little bit, but I will harass him later as well.
And what's the designer's name in BTC Pay? It's Destruct?
Yeah, there's a few. He's definitely one of them working on UX UI. So they do meetings, right, Pav? Like, and there's like video calls. So it would be good once things are a little bit more polished up to maybe present it to them. But Daniel had a good point too, in that it shouldn't just be BTC Pay, because I think eventually it'd be great for not just more competitors, but this idea of like growth and not having it be siloed and not having it be one open source project, which is why we kind of included, or I should say I included more options than just BTC Pay here, even though that will probably be of the biggest use case. I would like to eventually make this more generic, so folks who maybe don't even have a project but want to make a merchant project can apply this to whatever it is that's important for their region or their community or what works for them. Can't predict all the use cases, but would rather make this a little bit more generic than one single project, you know?
I think this is a good thing for introducing Lightning maybe to the Bitcoin Design Guide or connecting it, because
For sure.
it's kind of the use that people are likely to to have for Lightning. You know, I think it's kind of the everyday use, and it's an important thing to have in the guide. Yeah. So I'm glad you're working on this.
Thank you. It's a lot of pressure. I hope I can live up to expectations, and yeah, I just want to make sure that this is useful for people, because I think it's not just having the wallets for Lightning and the education, but also making sure that people can accept it, and that if they have questions, they can turn to us and we can help them improve it as time goes on.
And would you primarily focus this on the kind of the moment that you make a payment, or also kind of what happens behind the scenes? Let's say a merchant needs to manage Lightning liquidity or set up a wallet or something like that.
I was going to try to balance it a little bit. At first, I was thinking of just having like a really narrow focus, like on the point of sale. But to me, that felt like maybe we should have a little bit behind the scenes too. I don't know if liquidity immediately is the answer, but for sure I included like a little bit about like what is Lightning and kind of getting people primed for what it is before the point of sale, because I think it's really hard to articulate and there's no way we can help everybody understand. But I think the expectation of just like being able to accept it with no understanding or background feels like shallow or lacking. So I would like to do a little bit of both, but I'm sure easier said than done. That's an ambitious goal, I think.
It's probably too early, but I wonder even what kind of people you're hoping to, or personas you're hoping to address here. Is it more of a store type, or is it kind of the person that is likely to want to share something with their own community, you know, or I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good thing to articulate here. I guess I wasn't like clear enough, but I was hoping to do a little bit of both. So with the Oslo Freedom Forum, I was hoping to actually reach individuals who are wanting to do this, like people. Maybe there's an idea that activists are merchants, but they provide a service and they have, you know, whether it be like their teachers or community members, whatever. I think that would be like the use case for individuals versus perhaps in El Salvador where Lightning is currently happening. We could go to, I could go to businesses and see what they need and how we can help and get them started and learn from them as well. I think it's going to kind of happen really fast when Lightning adoption is here. And I kind of just worry that we maybe don't have enough education or enough setup for either party, whether it be individuals or businesses at whatever scale they exist. So just trying to start somewhere with it.
Yeah, one of my actually also ideas for my grant back in the day was catering merchants, but I took over way too many things in the meanwhile, so I never had a time to think about it. But I like the idea of having a merchant section. I just need to think about how do we communicate it and who are we designing it for. So you need to be careful not to make it like merchant specific, because the guide should cater to users who are designing applications for merchants, which of course mean that you would need to research, first of all, what are motivations of people who are accepting Bitcoin, what it takes for them to accept Bitcoin, how are they first onboarded, and what are their misconceptions, because they usually have quite a lot of misconceptions about it, and then how an app designer or developer can help clarify those issues that a new merchant who's been onboarded can understand, and how can he actually better understand this flow, because usually the way merchants are onboarded, they either have one-on-one discussions with people, or people scream at them to accept Bitcoin payments, and then they need to do a bunch of research, and then their payment processor, no matter which one they choose, is always like tricky to understand. So I would really focus on onboarding and making like those applications cater to those type of merchants which are scared or have no idea about how Bitcoin works and what are some of the issues that they're having and reasons why they're accepting Bitcoin, which is, I think you already mentioned in the user stories. So that one would be interesting. Payment part and UX pain points are definitely something that we can discuss, but what I'm more interested about is actually how merchants troubleshoot problems. So when people make payments to them, I think one useful thing can be that you can reach out to merchants that that was my idea, basically, to talk to merchants so that they can share support tickets that they have and what kind of questions are people having. You would be surprised. I see them all day long, like people not being aware that they need to scan from their wallet, something basic as that, and then people overpaying or underpaying invoices and stuff like that. So there are all sorts of things. I'm just, just trying to brainstorm things, and hopefully this is helpful. I don't know.
It is, and I do believe you. I see you in the chat. I see you all day in the Mattermost. It's true though, and I think that unless you know or you get really deep into like some of these issues, or you have access to something like Mattermost, it's hard to learn. So maybe like a troubleshooting section would be good to include there. I think I'm gonna, or like a FAQ, or like common questions or whatever. Yeah, something so people can put in their problems and learn from them. Yeah, I think that's a really great section. And I think we can build off the user stories too. I like the idea of when you were saying motivations and like why people do this, and not just accepting because they're in panic and people want them to and need them to, but understanding why it matters and sort of like an incentive structure. So I will think about a good way to include that. Thank you.
Yeah, also one last idea is that we probably should look into what happened in 2014 and 15, because there were a lot more merchants back in those days. We probably want to figure out why did they stop accepting Bitcoin. Like, I'm not sure, but we really had some big companies accepting Bitcoin. And this may sound controversial, but you may need to look into Roger Ver and how he onboarded people, because he was one of the people who was really instrumental in onboarding merchants. But yeah, then he went on full propaganda mode. And if anybody wants to learn more about this, Block Wars or something like that is the name of the book, in case you want to read it. But yeah, I'll stop for now. Yeah, it really tackles on that point. That. Yeah, so okay, maybe reaching out to people who stopped accepting Bitcoin can be useful to see why did they stop and what were the problems that they were facing. Maybe it was the fees, maybe, Lightning solves all sorts of problems for them. So maybe we can then figure out how to present those new things that changed meanwhile. So yeah, just an idea.
Okay, well, maybe that would be considered like background or something. I'm just kind of writing things down, like maybe that could be like a background section in the guide so people understand sort of the history of it. Yeah, super good. I don't want to dominate this too. I'm realizing it's like 15 minutes over, so we can move on to other things. But if anybody has any notes, even after this, I would love whatever feedback you guys have.
Yeah, which I think we can take half an hour for this if you want to. It seems like it's a big conversation.
If anybody else has anything, I mean, I would love it, but I don't want to be greedy with the time too.
Yeah.
I've been kind of quiet on this one because I've just been sitting here trying to think about it, and I guess the only advice I'd give is that it is a really, really broad topic, which is a good topic. It's one that we need. I mean, I think especially if if more and more people are going to be accepting this in El Zonte and El Salvador more broadly. So it's a very good topic to be covering. But yeah, I am trying to think about like, where does the topic end? Because I may be reiterating a little bit of what Pavlinek said here, but like you have like, okay, you got the user side that kind of how do they pay for Lightning maybe on a website, or how do they pay with Lightning or Bitcoin on a website? How do they do it at a point of sale terminal? What does the point of sale terminal look like? Then you have like, okay, well, on the merchant side, what does the merchant's point of sale, like what is the back office to the point of sale look like? How does the user interface, how is it designed to meet their needs? But then, yeah, you very broadly have this topic of like, well, why did people stop accepting it in 2014 and 15? And is it because of, volatility in the market? Was it because of security? And then that starts to get into stuff that's very complicated, like if it's a Bitcoin design guide and we're focused on design and user experience. I like to think we do a little bit more than just design pretty user interfaces, but we have to think about more than just what does the user interface look like. But you do start to get into some complicated territory when you have to think about the merchants and why do they decide to accept Bitcoin? How do they secure it? How do they set up their infrastructure? How do they manage their finances? Who in their company has controls to the keys? It becomes very broad. So I don't know if that was helpful or more confusing, but I guess
I totally agree.
Yeah,
I totally agree. There's a lot to think about here, and I don't see it getting any simpler. I think it will get more complicated.
Yeah, and that's not me trying to shoot down the idea. That's really just me trying to say,
I know. Yeah, I appreciate it. No, I think like honestly, all feedback is welcome, good or bad, and truly, I think that like this is a really complicated thing and hard to tackle in a focused way. So I guess my request maybe from you or anybody else would be, what are like some actionable things we could do with that? Because I fully agree with everything you're saying. I think that there's like, do we start with flows? How do we make this like user experience focused? How do we figure out the details around what's needed? And, it's going to be different as things evolve, but just figuring out sort of like actionable ways to write it down and get something in the guide, even if it's not perfect or 100% correct right away, or if it changes immediately, even just having something for folks to look at.
No,
I
absolutely.
think is a good point.
And I was intending that more as just to like, don't get discouraged by how big it is. Clearly you're not, because you're wanting to tackle this. But I mean, you might get into it and decide you want to focus in on like one specific area that you think is the most important area. As you get into it, I don't know. You'll see. I guess you'll figure that out. But I think it's great that you're doing this. And I guess one thing I'd be curious to learn as you start conducting your research is like when you start learning about, well, why did people stop accepting it, or why are they not accepting it? Like, are these like considerations with how the user interface looks, or are these more broader fears that they're having about Bitcoin and the technology itself? Is it something we can just solve through the interface, or are there other problems that we need to tackle to make them feel more comfortable with the technology?
Like a perception thing, right? Like,
yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's part of design too. It's like, it's also like elements of like marketing, unfortunately, which feels like a weird technical term for it. But like, I can see how people might not want to accept it if they've heard certain kinds of things, or they're not sure, or they haven't had any positive real world experiences. So kind of like separating that perception from reality is like a very difficult thing. But I will make a note of that. Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of simple entry points, just the actual payment invoice could be a very simple thing that everybody's familiar with. There seemed to be, didn't somebody on Twitter recently also post, Jacob Rogelberg posted something on Twitter where he redesigned the BTC Pay invoice. Like that seems to be something that a lot of people can connect with. And there's a lot of detail in there too with different, fallback to Bitcoin and whatnot. And the other thing, Pavlinex, from what you were saying earlier was, but let me have, and Stephen, you were talking about it too, I think, the guide focuses on helping designers, but we've also sometimes talked about creating guides for users. And I feel like this is similar, a guide for merchants. So it would be like bitcoinmerchants.guide or bitcoinusers.guide, like separate domains that are just for those audiences to figure out how to use Bitcoin for their particular purposes. It could be a separate thing. Yeah, it's pretty big topic. Would be awesome though. We'd need a bunch of people very passionate to sort through all of those things, because there's a group of us
There
that's
is also
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, and real quick,
sorry,
I wanted to
Chris,
give a quick shout out to Chris here, who's joining, designer
Hey, Chris.
from Nigeria. Hey there.
Yeah, Chris, if you have any thoughts on this, I'd love, any ideas.
Hey guys, good evening. Hello.
Hey, welcome. Good to have you here. Glad you could join.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I've been listening. I think this is my first call joining, so I'm trying to learn how the process works. But I was very much interested to work on this project.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, as many people as possible, like, hop on in. I think, like, I want this to be something that is not just me or not just my worldview. So it would be great for people from other countries and lifestyles and backgrounds and everything. Because I don't know how things work all throughout the world. So yeah, hop on in. That'd be awesome.
All right, so I'll reach out soon.
Please do. Yeah.
welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. How's it going over there?
It's hot.
It's cold here. So,
Yeah, cool. Anything? Seems like we need to talk about this a little bit further. But Johns, you were just about to say something, and then I interrupted.
Yeah. So when me and Pav were looking into like payments and merchant invoices and backends and stuff last year, I think the kind of like direction we were gonna go with it was like what are the components of the admin interfaces and the user face and the customer facing interfaces for like these merchant tools. So there's like BTC Pay Server. It pretty much like sets the foundation of like what's needed for like a merchant tool, like a Bitcoin merchant tool or payment processor. But perhaps there's going to be like more in the future, or like smaller versions, or like very specialized tools and whatnot that going to be that could be built out. Like maybe it's like a mobile version and it has to have like a I don't know, like order management or customer tracking, or sorry, not customer tracking, but like refunding functionalities. So if we could like break up BTC Pay Server and use that as kind of like the standard, because it's so feature rich and stuff, I think that's also a good direction to go. And at the same time, it could probably also help to kind of improve BTC Pay Server at the same time, because we'll be redesigning it in Wallet UI Kit.
Yeah, that was kind of my original idea. And I still kind of want to go with it, but I think Daniel had a good point in that it shouldn't be just one project. But the idea of having a standard really appeals to me, and the idea of contributing to multiple projects at once. I love like the intersection. I think like as much as we can, having the design community get involved with other projects is amazing, and seeing how we could help improve them too. Not just for people who are building wallets or people who are using this, but also like at a larger scale too. Whatever open source we can help out with, whether it's BTC Pay or Zeus or whatever. Like, I mean, I think that's like the best case scenario is like when these worlds combine. So totally agree with you, Johns.
Yeah, and these specialized tools, like I saw Chris posted something about like Join Market and well, yeah, we do talk about like BTC Pay Server being like the merchant tool, but it is the largest and the best and the biggest one right now. And it is going to be setting like standards, right? So, but other projects, like any other CoinJoin wallet, has user interface items that and challenges that are applicable to all the others, right? Things in Wasabi or Samurai or Join Market, like they still have this common core so to speak, right? You know, with a coordinator, registrations, and all this kind of stuff. At least for Wasabi and Samurai. I'm not so sure about Join
I
Market.
mean, yeah, but we can also start very simple. You need to distinguish between merchants accepting in-store and online merchants who have thousands of orders per day. For somebody in-store, quite honestly, a simple wallet with some built-in merchant-like features can easily beat BTC Pay Server, because BTC Pay Server really doesn't fulfill every use case, and it would be good to also explore how a wallet can cater specifically for merchants. So like maybe they can have a built-in point of sale app, they can have like better invoice management system, they may have like better refunding option or better connection with some tools that the merchant would use in their stores or stuff like that. So there are lots of perspectives here. So my just the last suggestion for Patricia would really to a little bit think through to it and just focus on certain areas, because an entire merchant section can really be a big undertaking. So for example, if your goal is to focus on onboarding and then maybe figuring out the perfect wallet that can help merchants in store, and then you have like merchants online, and then maybe improving invoices for merchants, like goals like that. Because if your goal is like create a merchant section, just from this discussion, which is like 28 minutes now, there are so many perspectives we can go into. So definitely quite a lot of people are needed in order to create a merchant section, in my opinion. But yeah, if we start small, maybe you can give a foundation to it, and then maybe later on somebody else can also get involved and contribute and improve it. But as Steven said, let's be careful not to go too broad, because it can really be a rabbit hole out there if we start digging too much.
100%. And I appreciate all the feedback. I'll probably be messaging some of you, because this is really great. And I agree that some focus should be taken here, and that many more people than myself should be doing this. But I do want to kick it off, and I appreciate you guys giving all of this like great insight. I have a lot to think about, so thanks.
Awesome. And one thing that I wanted to add is with the Bitcoin Design Guide, with the version 1, in some way, some of what we focused was on documenting what's happening right now. And I think with Lightning, we're thinking a little bit more about how things will be in the future. So once everything is on Lightning and it's the default, and it's just kind of a little bit of a different outlook. And I was wondering if that's also something that where this merchant section could potentially decide whether to solve problems that are the case right now, or whether to be forward-looking, or maybe it can do both in different ways. Because then I think you're designing things that are then kind of very ambitious and forward-looking, and that people will work towards, rather than solving problems right now. So you're solving different things, and maybe, I don't know, maybe there's something to decide there too.
I mean, for merchants in store, there isn't really an on-chain option. It has to be Lightning. There is no way. It never worked. And even if it worked, people used zero confirmation, people like Rogerware. And now you have like all of these wallets which have simple cancel function. So yeah, I would definitely have Lightning in mind, especially for retail. But like generally, I personally don't see Bitcoin scaling for merchant unless we think about Lightning Network.
So maybe it is like a little bit of what's going on presently and thinking forward. Could be a bit of both, but I see your point, Christoph. It's like, is this too forward thinking? But also, like, as Pav said, there's not really another option. It's kind of what we got right now. So it could be a bit of both.
Sometimes that's what you need. Like a lot of people are working on projects, they're solving problems they have right now. While the guide is kind of more open space, it can be a bit more exploratory, and maybe it goes into like tax deductions that automatically happen, and you pay your taxes on Lightning Network, or you pay there might be all kinds of things and technologies that are actually really good for merchants that we just never really put together that way. I'm not too familiar with it, so I can't really make up anything on the spot here, but maybe there are all kinds of interesting things. with Lightning that could be done, that will be the case in 5 to 10 years in the future if this all pans out?
When it all pans out, Christoph. When?
When?
Not
Exactly.
if.
When we make it pan out.
Yeah, we need to change that attitude. It's happening. It's already happening.
Infrastructure bill, here we go.
Let's do it.
All in there.
Okay, thanks, guys. No, I really appreciate it, but I also feel like I've absolutely taken this meeting from you guys. So if I can pass this off to Johns and Pav or whoever would like to go next, I appreciate the time.
Yeah, sure. Johns, do you want me to start? If we are done with the merchant section, maybe we can intro our technology primer.
Go for it, Pav.
Okay, so Johns, do you want me to share the Google Doc, or is it the one
Yeah,
that
yeah.
we're on? Okay.
Yeah,
let's share.
the Google Doc, yeah.
Okay, guys, so hopefully it's the right doc. So Johns and I had some time last 2 or 3 weeks we spent together in Montenegro, and we were like thinking how we can integrate Lightning Network into the Bitcoin design guide. And this like personal one-on-one discussion really turned out to be productive for both of us, because it allowed us to ask questions one another, and then also ask some random people that we met along the way how they feel about it, and even introduced Bitcoin to some people. And then we started like introducing Lightning right away. Anyway, we were going through the Bitcoin design guide and figure out that Technology Primer can probably a good place to introduce Lightning Network into the guide. And if you're looking at the doc right now, it is a disclaimer, quite a random draft, and we have the structure there, but like the text and everything else is really subject to change. Johns will now go into specific. I just want to maybe share our thinking here. So we were thinking like technology primer. Okay, so it needs to have a little bit technical terms that may introduce someone to Bitcoin. So how do we do that, and how do we introduce Lightning and the base layer from the start? Like, how do we distinguish them? Do we unify them? How do we present this concept to people? And we came up to the conclusion that we want to share like Bitcoin being this. Actually, we wanted to introduce like layers. So Bitcoin is a network, and then you have layers built on top of it. And one of the layers in which we wanted to focus is Lightning Network. In the primer, we actually wanted to explain like some of the shortcomings of the base layer and why layer 2 is needed. And our thinking was, and Johns will now go into it, I just want to give a little bit of summary. Our thinking was that base layer should be this secure layer where people can transact, and L2 is what is used for payments and for enhanced privacy and stuff like that. So you can go through the structure. We did a little bit of restructuring of the original primer, and we can discuss, if you guys like what we did here, and feel free to, post any comments on the document, because for now we just think that we have a structure in there, but we'll see if we manage to communicate it properly. So I will hand it off to Johns to guide you through what we did here, and then maybe we can have some time for questions and some general feedback.
Hey everybody, it's Johns here. So yeah, thanks for that, Pav. Let's see, where do we start? The base layer, of course, is this blockchain, and the most important aspect of the blockchain is to be to have this like very strong data integrity, and then once you have this data integrity, once you have these strong monetary principles, then you can start to build other things on top of it, which are not necessarily required to be stored forever on this blockchain structure, right? It talks about transactions being kind of like smart contracts in a way, and because of that, you can now program money, you can now build stuff on top of it, and those things are other layers, right? Those are the layers, and the way that these layers work, or at least the layer that we're focusing on, which is the Lightning Network, they work with these payment channels, and essentially a payment channel is a joint account. You know, we have this we talk about multi-sig, a joint account in other places in the guide. So this version also introduces that concept, but it is used in the way for payment channels. Yeah, it's used for payment channels, and then, okay, so once you have this payment channel set up, then, you know, how are you able to transact and what necessarily is happening? So that's where the routing and node section comes in, and it talks about, you know, things are not necessarily recorded on chain. Oh, sorry, the layers one talks about, you know, things don't need to be recorded on chain. But yeah, in the routing, people are passing back and forth these receipts. They're passing back and forth these receipts between the channels, and it's also possible to send a payment to to someone that you're not even connected with, because you have this node which has a bunch of other payment channels within it, right? And this creates this kind of network for you to be able to push money through. But of course, you need to be online to do that, and that means that the private key is also a hotkey. So then, what is a hotkey, or what is a private key to begin with? So it goes into that there, and then links off to the private key management section. Try to use some of the information that was already there. Rejig in the current technology primer, like restructured it a bit. But yeah, that's the more detailed pitch. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so if I can chime in just before we ask questions. So our thinking here was that the technology primer, of course, should have some basic technology terms that, you know, define what Bitcoin is, how it works. So we wanted to give this little paragraphs, like short summaries of all the important terms that, you know, are important for Bitcoin technology. So we didn't really go in depth, because that's what we will do in the, you know, payment section and wherever we decide that it is needed. But here we wanted to give people this glimpse on what it is, that it is possible that there are multiple layers built on top of it, and then that we'll be focusing on a layer called Lightning Network. And then I'm not sure if it is hard as we speak that you guys read at the same time and probably figure stuff out. But what we did here is that, for example, if we were explaining, for example, Lightning Network, and then we say like Lightning Network is a network of payment channels. That's how we would end the paragraph. And then in the next paragraph, we would right away explain, wait, what is a payment channel? And then we would explain payment channel. Then we would say that people use payment channel because XYZ, then in order to route payments, for example. And then, wait, route payments, what does that mean? And then in the next paragraph, we would explain routing and Lightning nodes. And that is how we were thinking about this. So explain some basic term, but also like have like these paragraphs answer questions. So paragraph 1 explains something, then paragraph 2 explain something that was already mentioned in the previous paragraph. So what we're trying is to tie it all up so that it looks at it, you know, we try to unify it in that way. I'm not sure if it makes sense. It will probably take some time for you to review it, and you may not be able to understand it fully because it is like for now still draft. So yeah, I hope that was clear enough, but feel free to ask us any questions if there are any, or suggest anything.
Yeah,
I'm just
and
curious.
that concept.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that is the exact same concept that the current tech primer follows. It's like, so somebody asks you a question, so what is a Bitcoin? And then you answer it, and you put it in your sentence. There's some word that they don't know, and then they ask about that word, and it's like it all strings together. It's like a conversation where somebody asks you something, and you give like the very precise, very simple answer, and that takes you to the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and then you follow very smoothly along, and it guides you through a lot of the main principles of the technology. That was the original concept, and I think Pavanex, it sounds like you're continuing to use that concept here, right?
Yes, absolutely. And your suggestion of us having like titles that actually ask questions, because it is actually like having a conversation with somebody, like explaining blockchain. Like, well, it's like a spreadsheet, database, and then like it makes a network, and then what is network and stuff like that. So yeah, that's correct. But Patricia seems to have a question, or go
I
ahead,
guess it's not
Patricia.
necessarily a question, but the links, I don't know if I'm clicking them wrong. I was trying to just click a couple of the links in the document and it wasn't working.
No. The links are just kind of like so throughout this process as well. We thought that the technology primer. Actually, how this started off was like let's start working on this roadmap, and that seemed quite a bit vague and a big undertaking at the time. So we're like, the technology primer touches on pretty much all areas of the guide. Why don't we just start there and write up these short definitions of the different things that we're going to need to explain in other sections. So that's why there's this more info, which we currently also have a few more infos there. But the ones that perhaps don't work is like payment channel lifecycle, and that's actually going to be a to-do, right? The life cycle of a payment channel, just as we have the life cycle of a transaction. So yeah.
The links don't work because some of them are just linked to localhost. You probably copy paste the text.
Oh, that one too.
your localhost.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I just clicked open a new tab and then nothing happened. But that would make sense. I like the idea of linking to more information too, so people can kind of get curious and see for themselves what else is out there. But this is awesome. Good job, guys.
Yeah. And then we should also come up with visuals. Like for everything that's described, have some visual that when they go together too.
For sure.
To like burn that concept into people's brains forever.
Yeah, I was hoping to get them done by today, but like the thing is, this is like the trauma from writing for the guide again. Stephen, you're, you kind of like start just like spinning and revising and going through the cycle just continuously and not publishing it. So it's kind of good that it's being presented on this call now.
Yeah, we can all tag team. No worries.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so our idea is to try to give a kickoff and some sort of a structure. So this is by no means the structure for the page or whatever. We were just like, as John says, we were having a discussion between one another, trying to explain like basic terminology and some basic stuff, and that's how we came up with the structure. So we are pretty much looking for any feedback regarding how the content is organized. Does it make sense? How do you feel by reading it? Does it make sense that we integrated it in this way by explaining Bitcoin as something that is programmable, that there are layers that you can build on top of it? Does that make sense? That's what our main question is. And yeah, we will definitely need to iron out text. And even if we do a pull request, I'm sure that there will be like lots of things that will be changed meanwhile, because some stuff may be complex. We were just really trying to, as we spoke, we were adding text, so it may not be perfect. We were just, does this make sense? That's what we are basically want to know from you guys.
And making sense here means that a new designer comes to the guide. They want to get a quick idea of what this Bitcoin technology is about. They read through this, and afterwards they have a very basic understanding of the core principles, and then they might want to dig into certain areas more to just learn more or dig in deeper.
Yeah, it's essentially going to be like a jumping off point. I think you remember from last year when I was doing those workshops, the technology primer was the page that I would send everyone to, besides the what makes Bitcoin unique. And having some more links there and just using that as a jumping off point, I think it's a good strategy. Things may seem a bit too much, maybe a bit too technical, talking about like programmable money and stuff like that. What is this concept? Why should like I'm sure those arguments could come about, but that's why we have the more info to link off over there. The overall concept of this page, and one of the other reasons that we decided to tackle this project, this page, was there's been discussions about having a second technology primer, which I'm very strongly against. One just focusing on Lightning Network. So I'm hoping that this is a demonstration that both concepts could be explained on a single page. Now, still in draft, still improvements, but I think it's a better place to start than a separate page.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Johns, I don't think I caught what the purpose, like whose motivation, or what was the motivation for doing like a Lightning specific one. I think this is a great thing to do, but I'm kind of curious. I think I missed that. Did someone want to do a Lightning specific version?
I can chime in. I guess that all comes down to our discussion that we all had in the beginning. How do we communicate Lightning in the Bitcoin Design Guide? Do we create Lightning specific chapter, or do we have a Lightning section, or do we try to integrate Lightning throughout the guide? And what Jones was trying to say is that our attempt, the two of us really, when we started talking about it, it made sense for us that we have Lightning integrated throughout the guide, because we do feel that Lightning really should feel natural to Bitcoin. It shouldn't feel like a separate thing. And hopefully in a few years, this really won't be a discussion. Everything will be unified and we'll have perfect UI. But until then, we just tried to tackle it on one page, and Technology Primer felt like a page where we can try to, talk about Lightning and Bitcoin on the same page so that it makes sense. Well, yeah, that's the summary. Talk about these two things, but in a way that it is unified and integrated, and in a way that it works together. So, yeah, I guess that's what we were trying to do here.
Yeah, and the real test of this will probably to get more feedback from people. If people say, I don't understand it, this doesn't make sense to me, what's this one thing, what's this other thing, then it doesn't work, and we might have to split it up. But yeah, I'll have to read through it first.
Yeah, it does have some very maybe non-conventional terms and stuff on there, like the transactions being like smart. Well, I didn't we didn't put smart contracts in there, but the transaction being this programmable thing with policies and whatnot. It may also be a bit technical, but one of the other reasons for writing it like that is that trying to do like a bit of FUD busting as well. I speak with a lot of people and they're like, oh, you can't program on Bitcoin. And it's like, oh, well, yes, you can. It may not be as verbose, but, it doesn't need to be. And you can still do all these like cool stuff on top of Bitcoin. So that's one of them. And then the other one is like, oh, well, why is Bitcoin so slow? Well, no, it's not really slow. It's actually really secure. And that's why the base layer has to be really secure. Versus like, let's do everything and scale the base layer with like shards or whatever. Instead of going that approach, or proof of stake or something.
Yeah, I think what Christoph said, like the ultimate test would be sending somebody who wants to learn about Bitcoin and trying to see if this all makes sense to them. So we should review this page from that perspective as well. We may have to simplify some terms maybe, but this is the structure we felt was good. And yeah, it is by no means the structure. We can always improve it. We just that's the perspective. Like if you're new to Bitcoin, somebody sent you this page, would it make sense? Does this, explain things well? Do we need? I'm sure that with illustrations and graphics, it will probably feel better. But yeah, as is, does the structure and the workflow we try to have, teaching one thing after another, makes sense? That's what we need feedback on, I guess.
I think Alexa, you attended one of those workshops and stuff where we were doing the introduction to Bitcoin and Lightning Network stuff, and now we have the Christian here. And I think he's like, if you're new to Bitcoin, and unsure about this Lightning Network stuff, we could probably do like a session to go through this page, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And help you understand this information. And I think this could be some good like user research for the guide, for this page at least.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think today is my first time getting to research on it, so I think the information you have would help me. So I'll jump in on it with you. So maybe see how well I understand it.
Sure.
Yeah, did you get what I said?
Yeah, I said thank you.
Okay, sure. That's fine. Thanks.
Yeah.
And then once we have the story down and some good graphics, then Stephen here can start animating it, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of that, can I share something with you guys? I hope that screen share will work. I found maybe something that can also be helpful for those animations as well. So I'm trying. Can I? Is it okay? Do we have some items on agenda, Christoph, or?
No, all good. Go nuts.
Okay, let me try to see if this works. Can you guys see it? Okay, so this is Polar. It is like a software that enables you to, develop. If you're a developer, basically better understand Lightning Network, and you can how the network works. But it can also help us designers. Here I have 3 Lightning Network nodes. Each node has own Bitcoin Core node, and this is really something fun because I think this is a good way to teach people about Lightning, because you can see you can drag and drop from one node to another, and then you can open a channel, for example. Then you can also make payments from one node to another, and then you can also learn about routing, because you can make all of these channels, and then you can learn why does a payment from one node maybe does not arrive to this node because they don't have channels and stuff like that. It is quite interactive, and it made me feel like it's really fun thing to play around. Of course, this is dev focused thing, but maybe we can create some sort of animations like this. This can help people understand stuff. Not sure, but yeah, it was a little bit connected, and I really wanted to share Polar. So yeah, I'll stop now. This was just the basic idea. Maybe it's useful for somebody, maybe it's not, but I really liked it, so I wanted to share it.
You're thinking too small. This could be an entire video game franchise. It's like Roller Coaster Tycoon or Sem Theme Park, the Sims. You could have a whole game where you simulate your own Lightning Network and open channels between all the people in your Lightning world.
Yeah, definitely. Like,
no one would ever buy that game.
Yeah. But
no one would ever buy.
It really doesn't work well on Mac for some reason. It's very slow, so I really cannot showcase it to you guys. But yeah, just wanted to share. Maybe it will be something that we can explore on one of those calls. Yeah, you see, I open a channel, and now you have channel in green. So these are all connected, but this one and this one have channels, and then you can play around and maybe figure out at least the basic concept. But what is really funny about it, that it really comes up with all the shortcomings of the Lightning Network, like nodes keep restarting and stuff like that. So I really had both fun, and I really laughed at it because it fails. And also they provide you like errors that may or may not be helpful. So it can be a fun thing to learn. That's all I wanted to share. Sorry for hijacking the call.
We should look at those on the Mastering Lightning calls. That looks really informative.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Have you guys seen other visual programming languages? This reminds me of like Max MSP and like audio, with like the drag and drop. And I think with like creating visuals, I don't know about developers, but I think about audio people. They don't like good design straight up. Like they like bad design. They like things that don't look good. Like they like a bad aesthetic. So I think it would just depend on who's using this. I like the idea of adding more visual elements like illustrations or whatever, but like I found with certain people who really like this sort of interface, like they are not looking for improvement. So probably just seeing who's using it, and if they actually do want this sort of like design detail or aesthetic that we want, Because I've put in so many hours for projects where they're like, no, we just like it to look bad. And you're like, okay, well, good to know.
Well, it's an open source project as well, so there's like some themes and
They don't
stuff
get
you
to
could
pick.
probably make.
Is that it?
Well, no. You could just probably create like a theme, so you have like an alternative look to it as well.
We could
with
just pitch it and see if people like it. Yeah.
Kind of like work theme.
But in 3D programs, like in Blender, when people put together shaders and whatnot, they also use a similar layout where they have these nodes or these elements laid out, and they're connected in different ways with different parameters. Seems to be pretty common.
We just lost Pavlonix.
He got mad. There he is.
Yeah, I'm loving the work I'm seeing on the Google document with the technology overview. So I'll give that a read through.
Yeah, this might be one of those things where it's helpful if we have a session where we actually read through it together.
Yeah, we used to do that. I remember,
Yeah, also Christoph, Jones and I that's how we were improving on this page. We read it out loud while having a beer or coffee or whatever, and we were like, well, this doesn't make sense, does it? Well, I don't know, let's ask this guy. Or let's ask...
How many beers did you have there?
I guess you can judge that by the content. If it's like too gibberish, be your own judge.
So if it made sense or not could be highly dependent on that variable.
Oh, good. That's a good one. Yeah, we could have some reading sessions and stuff.
Those are two really great initiatives happening here. Thanks for presenting today. Would you like to, do you have more questions? Anything else you'd like to talk about? Propose? Should we dive into the accessibility? I don't think we touched that too much.
We have.
Yeah, we can do it. If you want. Do you want to start, Alexa? I feel like I've talked enough this meeting. It was on my mind that we should get going and wanted to just see what other people thought about kicking that off.
Yeah, I was hearing what you said about it, and my mind is kind of trying to think of all of it since it's kind of
another big topic too, isn't it? Yeah. Overwhelming to think about.
Yeah, and I think one of the questions is, what is it that we are wanting to cover? Like, is it accessibility to the community itself? Is it accessibility to Bitcoin? Is it it can be a broad area. I was thinking of it kind of like a way to welcome people, to make sure that the community feels accessible, that it feels welcoming, that anybody could join and they would know, they would know that diversity and inclusion is one of the things that we think about. And obviously that also applies to products. So I don't know. What are your thoughts so far on that?
I guess it kind of dives into a little bit of what Stephen was talking about earlier with perception, right? It's like you could know and have the tools available for something like onboarding. Like we have an onboarding section, but if your perception is maybe that this is for someone else, or that people who look like you or have your background or whatever haven't traditionally felt very welcomed, yeah, you might not actually use the tools available. That makes sense to me. So I don't know if we want to organize it like its own section, or if we want to add like a flavor of it into some of the pre-existing sections. I don't know. I think it could kind of be tied in a lot of ways.
I do think that it's important to think about the people when it comes to any product, So
100%. Yeah.
That kind of came up with the merchant section as far as what it is that you think about. And I think you always think about the people, because the products tend to change over time, right? So if you think about who they are and what their needs are, it's one of the basic things to go through, I think. And so the accessibility section opens up that possibility of thinking about the people. Okay? not that all of the Bitcoin design guide doesn't think of the people. Let me see. Pavlik said it can be a page in designing Bitcoin products.
I mean, ideally, it could be a page in like everything, right? Like in a perfect world, we would just keep reiterating that like it's not just about solving a problem, but about the people who use it, right? That would be like a perfect world. But obviously, there's a lot of people who need to focus on the technical aspects or the user experience aspects. But I think that we should definitely be mindful to include this. So I don't know. Do you think like the merchant section is a good place to start and just kind of see if it like, I don't know, experiment with accessibility there and then maybe see what we think and how it goes? Or
I think it would probably be an easier thing to like choose one of the pages and stuff. But I think what I don't quite get is maybe I'm just not understanding the proposition here. Are we talking about? Okay, so we're talking about accessibility in terms of like usage and access. Are we talking about Bitcoin design, Bitcoin.design accessibility as well? Like, is that within scope? Like, is the web page screen reader friendly, color blind, optimized for colorblind people, etc.?
To that point, I did a bunch of work half a year ago or at some point to fix the majority of accessibility issues that it could figure out with the basic tools that Chrome and Axie accessibility analysis tools that they provide. There are two tasks, I think, around focus management and whatnot for menus that are not fixed. Those are not accessible to keyboards. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. A lot of low-hanging fruit is done on the website for the basic, the hard accessibility stuff that you can get done by proper markup and things like that.
Okay. And
go ahead.
Well, last thing, is it within scope stuff like making the content? I think because this is what I remember we talking about doing the content in different languages. There was some trick someone said about. I think Stephen mentioned about that on that call about like the language switcher and then seeing which one is the most requested. And perhaps like video content, does that fall under the reformatting the content to fit other mediums? Does that fall under accessibility?
I mean, I would just distinguish between hard and soft accessibility. Probably not real terms, I just made that up. But hard accessibility meaning that somebody who is excited about this and wants to use it is locked out because they can't see it, they can't interact with it, they can't touch it, smell it, whatever it is. Like, it's not working for them and they really want to do it, which is different than, let's say somebody is hesitant and they cannot see themselves, or they don't, you're right, there's a difference there. There are different levels of accessibility. Language is also harder than, let's say somebody has a personal hesitation. That's a bit softer. And then language is a bit harder. And then like, I'm technically locked out because this thing is not coded well. So it doesn't work with my screen reader. That's really hard, a technical problem. So maybe there's a way to split this up a little bit and maybe do some research, talk to problems, do some testing, get some people to use things and figure out where the hardest problems are that can be fixed, and then work backwards maybe.
Yeah. So I think I'm seeing kind of two different things here. One is the accessibility of the design guide or the design community at large. And then another one would be the accessibility of open source non-custodial Bitcoin products. I think both of those are worth looking at, but I think that they seem kind of like separate tasks in my mind. I will speak very briefly about the accessibility of Bitcoin at large, though, and including that in the guide. I tend to think that should be, similar to what we're talking about with Lightning. That should be, I think, not just one page about accessibility. It should be kind of addressed throughout the guide in wherever it pops up. We don't even really, I don't think have a page that really goes into like general graphic design principles, things like that. And because you can learn a lot of that stuff somewhere else. And we don't go into a lot of just like general accessibility stuff, because there's also a lot of really great resources for learning that stuff on the web. But what interests me personally is, what are accessibility issues that Bitcoin has specifically? Because I would hope at least that a lot of UX designers would be thinking about accessibility nowadays. I could be wrong on that, but what I'd be curious about is what accessibility issues that Bitcoin has that other types of software and other types of services don't have. One thing that jumps to my mind is if you're using a screen reader and then, you have to wait, I don't know, like 10 minutes for it to finish reading out a public key to you or something like that. I'm sure there could be many, many more problems like that, but I would be curious to know what someone who has a disability, experiences when they try to use a Bitcoin wallet with assistive technology, and just thinking, so like, okay, when we're in the private key management section, like a little note like, hey, when designing for screen readers, or when designing for whatever the thing is called where you can, like a Braille reader, when designing for Braille, this is what you need to keep in mind. And then when we start talking about like, making a Lightning invoice, like, okay, this is what you need to keep in mind when you're making a Lightning invoice for someone who has this specific disability. That's my initial instinct on the section, though I could be wrong on that.
That makes sense. It just made me think about, can I even scan a QR code if I can't see?
Yeah, so exactly. So how does someone send a Lightning payment, or what does that look like for someone who's using assistive technology? Is it something other than a QR code?
And I don't think we all have to pick one thing and focus on that. We can each have different areas of accessibility that we care about and focus on. It's another big one. More to do.
I think it all merges together, right? If you're trying to include more people in the community, then that means that the issues that they may have while using Bitcoin also need to be addressed. And I think they kind of go hand in hand. You have to reach out to people, and at the same time, you have to help make the design of Bitcoin products better. And though they feel like separate issues, I think it is kind of in tying both of them together that may arrive at something here.
We could ask via the Bitcoin Design Twitter account, what are common accessibility issues around Bitcoin? Just like we did with Lightning, there's some responses came in. Well, thank you, Alexa and Patricia, for completely solving all the accessibility issues. I'm excited to see what you come up with.
It's a long road.
Yeah. All starts with a single step, right?
Yeah, I'm just excited to get started. No matter how it materializes, like we've already been, just even having the discussion kind of is great. It's an upgrade from what we currently have, which is not a lot of talking about it. And I don't think it's because we don't care. I think it's just because there's so much going on. So I'm excited to just get started and kind of like articulate it and put it out there for people.
And I'll be sharing something a little bit later on. I've been thinking as far as social media goes, sorts of topics that we may be able to cover, kind of thinking of content buckets here. And one of them is like this idea of welcoming people to the Bitcoin design community. And I think it applies to accessibility. Yeah, it applies to kind of inclusion and figuring out what people need, or I don't know. But I'll share that a little bit later on, and I would love some feedback on that too. It's just beginning of concept mapping, I think, and I'll be adding more stuff as I think of it.
Awesome. No, thank you. Love all the initiatives that are happening here. Cool. So would you like to keep chatting? We're a little 10 minutes after the hour.
Yeah, Chris. I I think the idea of researching for accessibility issues, I know it's really a good one, because in trying to create a world of inclusion for everyone, I think the people that are particularly disabled would have a lot of issues using the network. So making research about them would be a good one for us all. And I'm really excited to join on that. So.
Thank you, Christian. Are there any specific issues that, for example, make it harder for you in Nigeria to access Bitcoin?
I think the primary issue about a lot of persons is kind of the complexities around interacting with Bitcoin products, because trying to understand things like gas fees and a whole lot of technicalities, particularly with the kind of apps that are available to us, things around Trust Wallet, trying to navigate, and a whole lot of things. So I think that the issues around the accessibility of the product is one thing, and then you know that a lot of persons, majority of the population are not so, I mean, not so educated technologically, so it's an issue. And then the second thing is when people finally accept Bitcoin as a new way of life, having the technical knowledge to manipulate it, because to them things around Bitcoin is around manipulations. So how do you do this, set this app and all? So I feel that would I say not having sufficient knowledge about how these things work, and then poor user experience of those apps we use over here, it's a core challenge for everyone here, for many people here rather. So it's mainly the tech guys, those developers and designers and all, because of their cognitive tech knowledge, they're able to access the Bitcoin products we have here. Yeah, but I think what we are doing in the Bitcoin community will really help a long way, particularly when it gains mass attention and then people follow the principles stated there to design products that will really profile those solutions to them.
If you're still looking for ways to get involved, it'd be awesome to have you hop into accessibility, because I think right now there are a few people in Slack from Nigeria, but there's not a lot of people who are actively wanting to get involved and help out. So it'd be great to have like a voice for someone who's in that area, since I don't think anyone else in this call actually is.
Oh yeah, sure. That would really be a great one for me to start with. I
Yeah,
will.
definitely. We'd love your perspective.
All right, sure.
I'm just trying to take notes here in the Google Doc. Feel free. I'm just trying to hack away here on the side, probably forgetting half of it. Feel free to add any notes there too. I'll post the link to the document again. Yeah, anything else? Or should we wrap it up for the day?
Let's wrap it up.
Yep.
Awesome. Then I will stop the recording. Thank you, everyone, for participating.